So I feel like, and that was a very hard question, figuring out
I hear
which
you.
book or movie character I would be. But I picked Meg March
Uh-huh.
from Little Women because, mainly because of her dedication to her family. I write family sagas, and family and faith are very important to me. And I just
Mhm.
feel like throughout the book, she has a very good character arc in that at the beginning, she is a little bit more concerned with what people think and pleasing her family and comparing herself to others, which I think as writers is something that we are naturally inclined to do. It's comparison.
Uh-huh.
But throughout the book, um, she comes to learn that family really is the most important thing. And I feel like out of the four sisters, she is dedicated to that. She's dedicated to her husband, even though several people don't really feel like John Brooke is a good match. But it all comes back to family, which is the same for me.
Wow, that's yeah. Well, wonderful. So we're today. Welcome everybody. We are joined by Kelsey Gietl. Welcome, Kelsey. Good to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you for that opportunity to be on.
So, as of the recording of this show, her latest book, has just launched. It's called "For a Noble Purpose." It's a historical fiction. So, we're going to chat all about that. Welcome to the Catholic Authors Show. It's the show about fiction for modern Catholic authors. We're talking creed, craft, and co-creation, rooted in grit, grace, gods, and sometimes dragons. Not today, though. I'm your host, Dominic de Souza, novel lover, all-round creative, founder of Catholic Author. We're here to inspire your faith and your fiction. So, Kelsey, before diving into talking about your novel and your writing process and how you make it work for you, what is your origin story and how did you discover a love for writing historical fiction?
Sure, and I love that you call it an origin story because I'm a big Marvel fan, and so seeing the origin stories, I love that. So I guess mine is I've always been interested in books and writing. My mother was a teacher, so we had lots and lots of books and stories growing up. All
Mm-hmm.
throughout childhood, I was writing short stories, poems, plays. My brother and I made a film, a short film, and then wrote a couple novels prior to the ones I have now.
Mm-hmm.
But those are not going to see the light of day. I was in high school. One was a murder mystery, and one was
Oh, wow.
a historical fiction about the Titanic. I've always loved history. It's just something that has really intrigued me, learning about how the past shapes our present and also shapes our future. So that's one of the things that I like to put into my novels is
Mm-hmm.
just that whole historical perspective. I live in St. Louis, Missouri, so we do have a lot of really great history here. So I can actually go and visit some of the places that I write about in my books. For Noble
Mm-hmm.
Purposes, not St. Louis, but some of my other ones are. So
Okay. Was there was there something growing up that just really tuned you into loving history versus, well, I don't know, the many other things that could be loved, or fantasy, or just other genres? Was there
um,
an event or somebody who inspired you?
I don't know because I wouldn't say that the rest of my family is super into history or anything. If I had to guess, it was probably I just had really good teachers. I know that
Mm-hmm.
there are a few teachers in particular. My sixth grade English teacher was one who really inspired me to continue writing and to believe that someday I could be published. She was the first person, other than my parents, to actually say, "Hey, you've got a gift here, and you should go for it." So, I don't know. History has just always been something I've liked. So.
Oh, that's cool. So, what prompted you to take the plunge, or bite the bullet and start writing actual novels?
So from that first high school novel that I wrote, there was a big gap in there, um, where I went to college and I got married and had kids and all of that. And then, actually in 2014, my grandmother died. And I
I'm
started
sorry.
working on my family tree and really
Mm-hmm.
investigating the lives of all of the people that went before, and just I was very intrigued by the stories of the ordinary, but realizing that the ordinary things we do in life, something as simple as just raising a family or, having like just having a faith perspective and sharing that with others, that those things seem ordinary but are very extraordinary when it comes to history. And so I decided to kind of pull back out those writing skills. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll take some of what I've learned about my own family and use it to inspire me to create books. So that was, yeah, 2014. And then my first novel was published in 2017.
Wow. So let's talk about that then. So, as I said, as of this recording, it's coming out maybe a couple of weeks after. But uh, what is the thumbnail of your novel For a Noble Purpose?
So it is loosely inspired by the Book of Tobit from the Bible,
Okay.
which I know as Catholics we are familiar with. Maybe I actually never read it until a couple of years ago, and just really love the story of Sarah and Tobiah and that entire, like, the demon Asmodeus and all of that, which seems so much like a fantasy supernatural type of
It does, doesn't it?
story.
Yeah.
So I was like, I feel like this needs to be a book. So I went through many iterations of how I was going to do that, and finally settled on um, a not a Western, but Oregon Trail. They're going from the South Carolina 1850s across
Hmm.
to Washington Territory. And I guess I should note, for anyone who's not familiar with the story, from the Book of Tobit, Sarah has lost 7 husbands, all killed by the demon Asmodeus. And Tobiah is eighth in line as her, like, next closest relative. He has rights to that. So he's willing to do that, but obviously there's some fear there because 7 people haven't made it through the wedding night before. So the
Hmm.
Archangel Raphael comes and gives them some instructions on providing a sacrifice and a prayer, and they do so. And the Raphael, he banishes the demon, and they go on to live happy lives. So I wanted to focus on that same sort of romantic aspect of Sarah and Tobiah and their supernatural journey without getting too far into the fantasy. So the way that I got around that is my character, Sarah, she has lost 7 husbands, and her parents have decided that they're going to send her to an asylum because that's what you do in
Okay.
the 1850s with women that you can't control. So she and her housemaid, Martha, they leave, they flee, and they end up meeting up with Tobias Lark. And there's 5 Lark brothers, and they're headed to the west. And so,
Hmm.
to incorporate that supernatural element, I turned it into a legacy that the Lark brothers have, where each of them are
Okay.
actually gifted with a particular gift that is all based in scientific fact, but it's kind of taken to the next level. So
Hmm.
Tobias has the gift of building and carpentry. So he can just do things, he can build things better, faster. He has knowledge that people in the 1850s would not know how to build things. But it's all, again, rooted in science. So he has to have those tools. He has to have, like, the wood and the nails and all of that. Um,
Hmm.
but he's able to do it very quickly. Like, he can build a wagon in a night, which is not something that normal people can do. Um, and actually, I took his story. Um, Tell me if I'm going on for too long, but
No, go ahead. It's intriguing.
okay,
Keep going.
I took his particular gift because, like, his brothers, one has, like, medicinal. He's a doctor, and another one has, like, a talent for kind of knowing the weather. He's a good meteorologist and can actually predict accurately. And then another one has the ability to find people. He has really good navigational skills. So Tobias, his carpentry skills, I actually used from there's a chapel in New Mexico, and I'm drawing a blank on what the name of the chapel is now. But Santa Fe, it's in
Oh,
Santa
there's
Fe.
a special staircase,
Yes,
isn't
there's
there?
a spiral staircase where the sisters there needed someone to build a staircase to their choir loft, but because of the dimensions of the building, they couldn't build a regular one. And so they prayed to St. Joseph, and this
Hmm.
carpenter
I think
showed
it's
up.
the Sisters of Loretto.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And so this carpenter showed up. He built a staircase, and it didn't have, like, now we know that scientifically it it can stand based on physics, but for the time it was kind of the same thing, that it nobody knew how it was standing. Like, there was no center support, there was no nails.
Hmm.
Like, so that was kind of the thought that I was going off of when I created his character.
Intriguing. So it's a Western romance, but it's got hints of paranormal in it.
Uh, yeah, because they're not. And again, and I put this all in my historical notes, because all of their skills are in
Hmm.
science. They can't just like snap their fingers
I
and make
see.
things appear. But it's kind of like, so for medicine,
Hmm.
the Watt brother Jameson, he knows things that he shouldn't know for being the 1850s. So like,
How do you I mean, like you said, I know it can be tracked down to science, but how do you account for that in the story?
well, that's kind of the part of the mystery, is that
I
they do
see.
not know the
Okay.
background of how their family got these gifts. Like, it is part of their family legacy
Okay.
that all generations, and they say that there was this ship back in 1700 that went up to the Pacific Northwest, and it held only like seven. It was shipwrecked. Only seven people survived. And according to the Lark brothers' father, they are the last ones. But all of them came back with these gifts. So part of the series is them trying to figure out where exactly these came from, like if there's a reasonable explanation to it, or if it's just something that God has bestowed upon them.
Okay. So how long were you crafting this book for? Like, well, let me ask, when did you dream up the idea for this book? Was it back when you were first reading the Book of Tobit?
No. I read that book and I was like, "Oh, this is really interesting." But I was working on a different series and I just kind of put it in the back pocket. But it was after well, I guess it was during while I was writing Unsettled Shores, which is my last book that I wrote, which was
Hmm.
about World War I, that I decided I was kind of going through all of my story ideas and wanted to do that one. And I picked the Oregon Trail because originally it seemed like it might be a little less gritty than World War I, which was my previous book. And I wanted
Hmm.
something a little lighter. But, and this does have its light moments, but the more I researched into the 1850s and the Oregon Trail and Southern economics and all of that, it's a very complex area. And
Yeah.
I really enjoy it. I've been learning so many things, but yeah, it's not as lighthearted as I thought it was going to be, which I don't like steering away from tough topics, but it does have a
Hmm.
romance in it, so that's a little on the lighter side. Um, but no, it was recently. I think I just got way off topic of what you were asking me of how long it took to
I was
write this.
curious how long have you been working on this book? How long has it taken you to get it to, well,
Yeah.
today, to the launch?
So April 2021, I started outlining, researching, and then I kind of researched all through that summer because I was trying to figure out which time period to put it in. So that took me a while because I was researching several different time frames. And then
Hmm.
I was actually talking to an author friend, Tanya E. Williams. She writes historical literary, and she suggested Antebellum 1850s. And
Hmm.
so I looked into that. I hadn't thought about that because right now I've only written 1910s. So I was looking more in like 1900, 1890, 1930s, something like that. But 1850s just seemed to fit when I started researching it. So it was about
Hmm.
4 months of researching, like hardcore researching. And then I started writing. So it's been about a year, so a year and 2 months from starting it. But obviously, the research is ongoing while you're writing. You're always looking up those little tidbits and then
Sure.
continuing to research the series as I'm going and things change.
In that block of research, or even afterwards, was there some things that you learned that you didn't know that really surprised you?
Like historically,
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, actually, I really enjoyed learning about, even though technically they are never in the South when they're in this book, but the main characters come from Charleston, South Carolina, and then they meet up with Sarah, who is from Missouri, from an area called Little Dixie in Missouri. I made up a town called Hawthorne Ridge, but the overarching area was called Little Dixie. And a lot of the economics of the time period I found very interesting because, in school you learn that the South and the North, that it's clear cut. Like everybody in the North was anti-slavery, everybody in the South was for slavery, and that was all the war was about. But it was really a lot more than that. It was primarily an economic, like obviously slavery, bad. It was good that we ended that. But
Sure.
there was a whole economic process behind it, and it affected both the slaves and the slave owners and the people who had nothing to do with it whatsoever. So I found it very interesting, all the different stories that I learned of how those decisions affected people and affected their businesses. And even in Missouri, because I've lived in St. Louis my whole life, I had no idea how affected this area was by the Civil War, where it actually, we had these plantations in the middle of Missouri. And I had no idea there were plantations here. And it was like one of the biggest hemp producers during the time. I had no idea about that either. So just learning those stories about an area that I live in, I found so fascinating. And hearing about, I really wanted there to be a dynamic as I was learning this between the typical stories that you hear of slavery and those stories of people who were really trying to help others, but were placed in a very difficult position where it wasn't so easy as just, I'm going to free you. And so that was a hard dynamic to get between my characters, my white and black characters, because they bring some of their prior slaves with them. They treat them very well and they're friends with them. But it's interesting because they do have to keep papers on them as they're traveling to keep their former slaves safe. Because if they just went off on their own, there was an act, I believe it was passed in 1850, where any black people could be rounded up and returned to slavery, whether they were free or not. And so the Lark brothers have to keep those papers so that they can prove that they own the people when they don't really own them. So just those kind of very complicated things I found fascinating while I was researching.
Wow, that's history's a mess. Oh, how intriguing. So what was your writing process? Well, actually, when you're researching, this is actually something that I ran aground in wanting to research and understand something, and I'm terrible. How do you know when to stop? Like, what's your sort of metric of, I now know enough to get back to writing and maybe just put brackets or comments, research this later? Or do you just follow the rabbit holes and then come back up, let it simmer for a couple of weeks and then find out where to go? Or how do you handle integrating the research?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's definitely rabbit holes. Don't get me wrong. Those happen often, where you end up in a totally different time period than you started out in. But I have gotten a lot better. So this is my 5th book. I've gotten a lot better since the beginning one. Like in my first book, I was like, okay, I have to research every single tiny thing, like every page, every detail has to be 100% historically accurate, which, yes, your book should be historically accurate, but we're not writing a textbook. So it's been a while, but I've kind of learned to find the balance between, like, you need those overarching, like you need your setting, your culture, economy, that kind of thing to be right. But now when I write, I look at the big picture. And so I read through all of the high level details of the time period. And then as I'm writing, like I get my outline together and I outline based on what I want to happen. And then as I'm writing, I just kind of mark, like I just put comments to the side of, look this up. Like, is this even right? Does this exist in this time period? I do that kind of thing, but I just keep going on the chapter. so that I don't get
Mhm.
bogged down with that and then lose the flow of what I'm trying to say. And then I'll come
Mhm.
like during my editing phase, I will come back and I'll answer all those questions. And sometimes
Mhm.
it does affect things, especially if you find out, oh, that's not during that time period at all.
Another 35
Yeah.
years. Yeah.
But
Okay.
I've gotten better with not needing all the details.
Do you as you're writing the novels, did you, and like you said, you've done this now multiple times. Have you found uh, how do I say, like, when it comes to writing, some of us tend to favor a lot of exposition, and then there's some authors that there's like barely any exposition, just a few quick outlines to indicate the scene,
Mhm.
and then it functions almost like a play because they're far more interested in the inner life dynamics versus the proving the competence of, displaying historical realism.
Mhm.
I'm curious, how do you have more of a focus in uh, sort of telling the story from inside the characters out? Is it like equally balanced between talking about where, what kinds of houses they're in, and what their lives are actually like, or is that kind of extraneous detail that you don't worry too much about?
Yeah, so I actually find it funny that you brought up plays because all through high school and college, that was like all I did was theater.
Okay.
Not acting. I was behind the scenes doing design work and stage management and that type of thing. But that is
Mm-hmm.
very much another type of storytelling. And
Mm-hmm.
in my books, yeah, I'm more focused on the characters. So I do provide the history, but it's more of a setting. It's more of a background,
Mm-hmm.
and the story is about those characters and their feelings and how they react to those historical
Mm-hmm.
events. Because I really want readers to feel like they are in those characters, that they're reading it and they go, yeah, that's me. Like, I understand what you're
Mm-hmm.
going through, despite the fact that it was 150 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Really, things don't change. Like, human
Right.
emotions don't change. So that's what I want my readers to get out of it.
Mm-hmm. No, that's intriguing. Um, there's another question that came to mind. I'll just trim this out after, but I can't remember what it was. Uh, well, anyhow, all right. Let's keep going then. Um, do you have a particular writing method that you like to follow? So, since starting this show, I've now read "Save the Cat Writes a Novel," which was awesome, and then this past weekend, I finished writing. Not writing. I finished reading. What was it called? Take Off Your Pants. I think it's following the pantsing sort
Oh,
of
yeah.
method, and it's far less. It's got a far less focus on um, plot beats and more of the what are the internal beats that a character needs to go
Mm-hmm.
through, and then once you know that, then go ahead and sort of I don't know. It just seems like, what is it? Six half one way, half dozen the other. It's, they both seem like very similar or just very complementary sort of
Mm-hmm.
things. Anyhow, I was curious. Do you have a particular writing method that you like to follow when you're plotting or outlining, or how do you approach that?
Yeah, I like to tell people that I write in chaos. It's gotten more
Okay.
organized, and I definitely am not a complete pantser. Like, I don't just sit down with a blank sheet and just go.
Well,
I
with 4 months of
Yeah,
research, I can't imagine
I
you
do
would.
outline. And actually, for this series, I would say that I outlined and plotted more than I did for any of my other books. And that was primarily
Mhm.
because um, I wanted to have an arc that went through all 5 books. So there were some key things that I needed to make
So that's
sure.
a beat I missed. You've got 5 books in the
Oh, yes.
pipeline, and this is part
Yes, I have
one.
5 books,
Okay.
and so there's 5 brothers, and each book is going to focus around a different brother. So I do
Hmm.
have to have, like, there are some things in the future that I do need to kind of foreshadow earlier
Hmm.
on. But I
Okay.
also work in a very fluid way in that sometimes your characters just say, we are doing this thing that is not in your plot,
Hmm.
and we're doing it now. And usually when I listen to them, it ends up taking me in a good direction. So I can already tell you that, like, the main plot of book 3 has changed, which changed the plot of book 4. And actually, book 3, I'm going to completely blame on my beta readers because it was a good thing. But there's a character in book 1 who is very minor, super minor
Hmm.
character. And at the end of the book, pretty much every beta reader said, well, what happened to that person? Like, she disappears in the middle of the book. She's really not important.
Mhm.
But they're like, what happened to her? We want to know. And I'm like, okay. So I thought about it, and now she's like one of the main characters in book 3. So,
That's awesome.
you know, you do what you can,
Mhm.
but sometimes things just happen.
That kind of thing really intrigues me. The impact of involving your audience
Mhm.
um, in the creative process. I mean, like you just said, if you know, I'd gone up into a cabin and just punched out 5 novels, and then that would have been a completely missed opportunity. I'm curious, now that you've done this so many times and you involve beta readers early on, do you have a process there for, I don't know, writing chunks of a novel and sending it out to be read to sort of get a sense of what could be new opportunities for the second half of the novel? Or do you just like to hunker down over a first draft before anybody sees it? Or
I do
how do you like to
both
work?
now. Originally, I didn't like for the first several, I didn't send it to anybody till it was like perfectly polished. So now
Mhm.
for this last one, and actually number 2 that I'm currently writing, um, I have a few select people that have gotten to see early chapters, just where I'm like, I can't figure this out. Like, the beginning is just like, for book 2, the beginning was just slow. I was not feeling it. So I had a couple people look at it and help me to retool it. But the majority of my beta readers, I pretty much try to get it to where it's like publication worthy, where I've done everything I possibly can. And then I give it to them because I know they're going to find things that I missed. So for the most part, they're reading
Mhm.
many edits through.
So I'm curious to ask about the publishing side.
Mhm.
Um, what did you opt to go with, self-publishing or traditional? And then what was that experience like for
Yeah, so I'm independently published, self-published,
you? Hmm.
and I like it. I think that I did a lot of research on
Hmm.
both different methods and talked to many people about why they chose each one. And I never queried to go traditional. I just decided indie was right for
Hmm.
me and how I write. Again, because I do write in kind of a chaotic style where
Hmm.
my book plots may change on a whim. Um, just traditionally, I don't think it would work well for me because they
Hmm.
tend to want you to submit, like, here's what your book is actually going to be about. And if halfway through the book I change everything, I've heard from many
Okay.
authors they don't like that, which, you know, is fine. Like, traditional is great for some people. I like to have creative control over a lot of things. So I design my own covers as well. And I know that's,
I was going to say they're stunning
thank
covers.
you.
You literally design them yourself, or you commission them with an artist,
Uh,
or
no, I design them myself.
okay,
So
they're
thank
beautiful.
you. Yeah, actually, my first 4 covers, the inside info, the first 3, the person on the cover is me. My daughter took those pictures. And then the
Oh,
fourth
really?
one is my daughter. I took that picture. That's why there's no heads, so you can't see me, because that was kind of
Oh,
my way of getting around buying stock photography at the time. Um,
gotcha.
the
Okay.
most recent cover, the the art museum in New York, has just this
Hmm.
phenomenal open access um, gallery. And
Hmm.
so for a noble purpose, the background is multiple paintings put together. The dress is an
Hmm.
actual 1840s dress. I was so excited to find it. And then I did buy the
Oh,
head
that's cool.
off of like Adobe stock and kind of put it all
Okay.
together.
I
So
would never have known.
yeah,
Beautiful work.
so it's fun finding, and I've done covers for a few other authors as well. But
Hmm.
I really enjoy that outside of writing. I enjoy that creative process of working with the author to figure out exactly what they want and then having to go get those
Hmm.
pictures and put it all together. It's just a great feeling when you're able to um, make that visual representation of the
Hmm.
story. So I really like that as an indie author, I have the ability to do that. And
Hmm.
also the part that's not as great, I guess, but I still like it, is the actual business side. So, you know, you have to go and create a business with the Department of Revenue and do your sales tax and all of your like your regular taxes and have your bank account and all of that, which is definitely not the fun part of writing. But
Hmm.
I don't know, it's good experience to be able to say that you do those things, and then I can help other authors with that as well, which I like doing.
Yeah, it might be actually really cool to have you come back and speak more to
Oh,
that. Um,
sure, I'd love to.
that'd be very interesting for authors who want to get a sense of what's involved and how much maintenance or how much thinking needs to go into it.
Mhm.
That's intriguing. But, I wanted to ask about more of the self-publishing process, but you mentioned that the creative control was extremely important to you,
Mhm.
or being able to control your timeline or the direction of the drafts and so on. Because you keep making this point, and a lot of authors do, about actually getting into the weeds, or should I say, getting out in the field with a character, and all of a sudden they want to do something different, or they communicate, you know, this needs to go a different way.
Mhm.
And I'm curious how, um, like, what do you think is going on? Like, how does that happen? Like, you're the, you and me, we're the authors,
Uh-huh.
and we want the story to go a specific way. How is it that a character can, in the space of a paragraph, suddenly reveal an incredibly compelling reason to need to do something or be someone
Uh-huh.
different? Like, what do you think is going on? I imagine you must have thought about this
Um,
coming afterwards. Like,
yeah, I don't know that there's a great answer, but I think that the brain, the human mind, is a very complicated thing. And I'm
mm-hmm,
guessing there's just like things back hidden that are those characters that, I don't know, all of a sudden something in our brains just must click. And, or I don't know, as we're learning along with the character, and
mm-hmm,
so then we come up with the idea. I don't know, but every
yeah,
author I have ever known has the same thing of their characters taking
mm-hmm,
over books. I have
yeah.
a friend who got her best book idea at like 3 in the morning. She woke up in the middle of the night and her character wouldn't leave her alone. And so she created an entirely new book for that character.
Wow.
So
Yep.
I don't know. I don't have a good answer to that question.
I think it's funny how it happens. I think sometimes when we're creating stories, we have a direction for the story, and we assume the character is going to end up wanting to go there until we actually do the work of living the character, and then things change. Remember, as a kid, there was one little character that I created, and then I thought, I'm going to try and write a little more mature story
Mhm.
with this little cartoon character I'd created. And as I tried to get into his mind and his little life, all of a sudden I realized how intensely angry and frustrated he was
Mhm.
at things going on. Realized this is not the character I created. I had to just back away
Uh-huh.
and just I left that story alone for years because I wasn't sure where it was going. It's so funny how to,
Mhm.
as long as you're outside a character looking in, we can make all kinds of assumptions about them until you take them seriously from the inside out. So
Mhm.
that's
I agree.
intriguing. So I'm curious about the editing process. How did you make that work for you? Was it expensive? I'm sure a lot of people are curious about how that works when you're
Mhm.
self-publishing.
So I mean, I know you're not supposed to edit your own work, but I do have a background in editing, and part of my day job is I do a lot of reading and editing, and so I do several rounds of editing. I really like editing, which is something I think most authors don't enjoy. I much prefer that over drafting. Like drafting to me is hard. So I'll go through about 3 or 4 rounds of editing myself. And then I have, so like my group of beta readers, within that group, I have, I think, 4 authors now who are also very good at editing. So I actually do not hire an editor, but one of my beta readers is an editor. I have a few
Mm-hmm.
other that are historical fiction authors. I have someone who's a teacher, someone who is a screenwriter. So they're all very well versed
Yeah, no
in that
kidding.
process.
Mm-hmm.
And they read my story like in the nitty gritty and they like tear it apart. So I'm very thankful that I do have
Well, if that doesn't give you confidence, I don't know
such,
what will.
well, it's good feedback. It's not like I hate your
Yeah.
book. It's constructive. So, and then I
Mm-hmm.
do have some other beta readers who are just like people who like to read. They're not
Mm-hmm.
they're not editing type folks, and those people are good too because
Mm-hmm.
they give you more feedback just from the character perspective. So you know if
Right.
there's something off within
Mm-hmm.
like,
More of that developmental editing
yes.
level.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think that's yeah. I think it's not something that we should allow us to hold ourselves back. I mean, there's simple stuff like Grammarly we can use. There's
Mhm.
friends that we can use.
Yeah. I use Grammarly kind of as after I do all my editing, I use that at the end because
Mhm.
it doesn't always provide accurate for writing
Right,
like
according to what you need. Yeah.
fiction. So
Hmm. No, I think that's intriguing. Um, what is your writing process like when you're in the zone or something? Do you like to write a little bit every day, or is it um, you work towards a book and then you hunker down for a set period until it's done, and then you stop writing for a while and take a break, or
yeah.
once a weekend or something?
So since I do have a full-time job outside of writing, so I tend to get up about 5:30 or so in the morning. And so I do a
Hmm.
few hours before I actually start working, whether like I do all my social media in the morning, and then I'll like
Hmm.
look at, okay, what do I need to do? And then I'll plot or I'll write or whatnot. Once I get into the phase where I've kind of filled in the blanks and I'm starting at the beginning and drafting through, I try
Hmm.
to, if I can, do one chapter a day. So I try to get through like 2 to 3 chapters a week,
Hmm.
depending on how it goes, writing. And then when I go through editing, I do the same sort of thing. And I do make a timeline, which I think, especially when you're indie, is very important to give yourself deadlines or you're just going to write
Hmm.
forever. So I do that. It doesn't always stick 100% because again, there's other things going on. But that's kind of I do a lot of it in the morning. Sometimes I do it in the evening. But I also tell authors like you can write at any time. You just may not be
Hmm.
writing. Like you could be doing the dishes and thinking about what your character's doing, or taking a shower and putting together a plot line. Like so, there's a lot of that, especially when you're a parent. You just have to get it in where you can.
No kidding. And then when you're crafting a 5 part, is it a series or is it a single story told through 5 viewpoints? Or
It's a series. So I
okay.
like to have a particular arc, like a plot line for each one, um,
Hmm.
to where hopefully you could read it. My first 4 books, you could read them all individually. This one,
Okay.
there's going to be more carryover.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, each one will have its own
Hmm.
separate entity, but then an overarching arc.
So when you have a story where you've got an arc and you come to a satisfying end, and then you pick up the next book in the series and you start again with the characters,
Mhm.
how have you tackled the sort of the flaw or the motivation? Like, how much do you actually resolve of it in the, say, the first book, or do you just introduce maybe a new flaw or a new problem, or like, how do you keep the characters like always growing, or are they the kinds that are more static, or how do you handle that?
Yeah, so since each one in this series is for a different brother, and then there's a female lead as well, like they have
Hmm.
their own individual um, issue, whatever it is that they're dealing with, and that is resolved by the end of that book. But then
Hmm.
obviously, like we have the legacy and the gifted that will continue on, and I try to pull back in those other characters a little bit in each one so we can
Hmm.
see what they're up to and continue their arc. So sometimes during my editing, I have to kind of look at each character and go, okay, what is this character supposed to be doing? Are they like following their arc through the whole thing, or did they just like disappear halfway through and we don't know what happened to them? So sometimes I do have to break it up when I'm going back to make sure we've seen everybody.
Okay. No, that's so intriguing. I think I just chatted with another author who's sort of doing something similar, but she wrote one story and then she's writing like 4 other vantage points into the same story,
Mm.
and kind of as a sequel, which was very, it's just intriguing way to go. How did you handle it with the previous novels that you wrote, which they're more sequential with the same characters?
Yeah, so each my first two, the Over the Atlantic, had so book one had two the two characters, and then I added in a third point of view for the second book. And then with my second duology, my World War I, War Across Waters, I actually took side characters from the first two and gave them their own story. Um,
Oh, I see.
and
Okay.
so there's just the two points of view in the first one. And then in the second one, there were four. So I added on two more. So there was like the two couples that were telling the story.
That's intriguing. That strikes me as a very smart way to go, to use something familiar, but then uh, take those side characters and then flesh them out
Mm-hmm.
in a follow up. That's intriguing. Well, in starting to wrap up,
Okay.
thanks for coming on with
Yeah.
us, Kelsey. If you had a minute to share, well, first, actually, how can people get in touch with you? Where can they find you online?
Yeah, so I mean, you can go to my website, kelseygietl.com. I'm also on Instagram and on Facebook. There's a contact page on my website as well if you want to get a hold of me there. I always suggest people sign up for my newsletter so that you make sure you're seeing everything, as social media doesn't always show you stuff. But yeah, any of those are great.
Fantastic. So, if you had a minute to share a word of encouragement to other authors out there, what would you like to share with them?
Yeah, I would say just keep going. Like, even if you're just doing a little bit every day, don't compare yourself to others, and just realize that God's timing is perfect, not ours. And that even if it takes you a little bit longer to get somewhere, like, you're getting there exactly when He wants you to get there. And that's something that I continually have to remind myself to. It's that we're using our gifts for Him, so He's gonna get us where we need to go.